Donald Trump arrives in Saudi Arabia on day one of his very first international trip as U.S. president. He'll meet with a number of Muslim leaders over the next 2 days and deliver a speech that will be very closely watched.
It is a story we're following live, even though, as Mr. Trump was aboard Air Force One en route to Riyadh, news continued to break about his embattled White House. We'll have the details. Welcome to our viewers here in the United States and all around the world. I'm George Howell.
And I'm Paula Newton. You're watching CNN Newsroom. It's 4 a.m. in the U.S. East Coast, 11 a.m. in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where the President of the United States is getting a lavish welcome from Saudi leaders. Now, the kingdom has extended a few courtesies that were notably absent from President Obama's visit there last year. That includes King Salman coming out to greet him on the tarmac.
Mr. Trump was treated to a traditional tea ceremony shortly after there at an airport terminal. And in a few hours, he and the First Lady, Melania Trump, will head to the royal court to meet further with King Salman. That meeting set to be the full-fledged arrival ceremony, and then after that, he will hold bilateral meetings with the king. The president looking to turn a page this week with this trip, though the shadows of the problems that he leaves behind in Washington, they seem to be growing bigger and bigger by the hour.
Understatement right there. Sources tell CNN that Russian officials were so confident of their close relationship with Trump advisor Michael Flynn during the U.S. presidential campaign that they bragged about it among themselves. Now, they believed if Mr. Trump won the election, they could use Flynn to influence the White House.
That's problem number one of four lately. Number two, the former FBI director James Comey abruptly fired last week. Now, Mr. Comey ready to tell his side of the story. He will testify before Congress in a public hearing before the Senate Intelligence Committee sometime after May 29th.
Now, hold on, there's more. We're also learning this. President Trump reportedly insulted Comey the day after the firing. According to the New York Times, he told senior Russian officials in the Oval Office that Comey was, quote, crazy and a nut job.
All right, and storyline number four we're following. CNN has learned that lawyers within the Trump White House, they've started researching impeachment. The White House also considering hiring an outside legal team. A lot to talk about on the domestic side for sure. Let's start, though, by compartmentalizing all of this and starting with the story at hand this hour happening in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And that is where our international diplomatic editor, Nick Robertson, is live following the president's visit there. Nick, it's good to have you with us. The president's first international visit as U.S. president. Talk to us about the arrival. What was that like and what's set to happen today?
George, stepping off the plane Air Force One at the airport, King Khalid International Airport, President Trump could only have been hoping for what you're talking about there, compartmentalization, to step off the plane, put behind himself for the time being the issues that he's facing in Washington and get to the issues in hand here, shaking the hand of King Salman, who's now 81 years old, who came out right to the end of the red carpet at the foot of the stairs of Air Force One. This is unusual in any context for the Saudi king to come out to the airport to greet any visiting dignitary. And it's certainly not the level of respect and warmth that was accorded to President Obama when he came here just a year ago. So that's a very strong sign, along with the flags that the U.S. and Saudi flags lining the roads that President Trump and the king will have driven by to their first engagement here. It's a very, very warm welcome. So today, President Trump will spend quite a lot of time with the king, and that also is unusual. Normally, the king would be one of several people that a president would normally visit, but today there's a lot of time with the king, various riding in the car, greeting at the airport, at the palace as well. President Trump later meeting with the deputy crown prince, that's the defense minister, the king's son, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is also the architect of the vision of the future of Saudi Arabia, the 2030 vision to wean the country away from oil, to cut down the number of government jobs and increase the private sector workforce here. So a key player in the future of the country. But he'll also meet with the Crown Prince, Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, who's the Interior Minister. older than the king's son, who has a longer, stronger, deeper relationship with the United States, particularly on fighting terrorism. This is a prince who's actually been personally attacked by a suicide bomber, was slightly injured but survived. So obviously stories to exchange there. But President Trump's perhaps biggest part of his visit here will come on Sunday, and he'll meet with members of the Gulf Community Council, Gulf Cooperation Council. That's the sort of immediate regional allies of Saudi Arabia and the United States. But he'll also meet with an expanded forum of many regional Arab and Muslim leaders here, and it's in front of them that he'll expected to give a speech about Islam and about how what President Trump hopes and believes and wants from all these leaders is that they can preach a more tolerant, a more peaceful vision of Islam. And that, of course, will be a tough speech to deliver because those leaders already believe that, George.
Talk just a bit more about this speech, Nick, because quite frankly, there are 4 different dimensions that viewers can see this particular trip. Obviously, the trip is very important, resetting, quite frankly, from Saudi point of view, relations in comparison to the Obama administration. Also, there is the domestic situation that we will certainly talk about here just a bit later in the newscast. There was also candidate Donald Trump and then President Donald Trump. Candidate Trump, who is criticized for Islamophobic tones during the campaign. The question here is, with this speech, how important is this speech? A speech, Nick, that is going to be written by Stephen Miller, a man who also has been criticized by many as harboring Islamophobic views. How important will this speech be, and what is expected there in Saudi?
Well, something that the White House recognizes has to be carefully calibrated. Respectful is how National Security Advisor General H.R. McMaster characterized how the speech would be. It is a big ask, isn't it, for anyone who's been so critical of a faith to come to the crucible of that faith, Islam, and to preach a message to all those Muslims about Islam. I've been asking Saudis here why they think that President Trump can be trusted, what he can deliver, and how can he come here and give that kind of message with the background he has. This is what I heard.
Maybe he make apologize for all Muslim what he say about Islam.
I like it, but Trump, he's good.
Why?
Because he's going to different everything.
He's make everything different.
Everything different.
What do you want from it? Why is it so important?
Well, we would like to confront Iran. Iran has expansionist policy in the region. It has Hezbollah in Lebanon. It has Houthis in Yemen. And we would like to confront this expansionist policy.
So is President Trump a good man?
I don't know.
You don't know? Maybe.
He try fix the mistake they make it Obama. He make a big mistake.
But this is the same President Trump who had a very negative message about Muslims in his campaign trail.
Right. But, you know, it's always said that campaign rhetoric tends to change after, you know, the election.
And he coming to Saudi Arabia because he likes Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia like it, USA.
One of the things he's going to do while he's here is deliver a speech to all the leaders here about Islam and to ask the leaders to preach a peaceful version of Islam.
Well, it's a goal to confront radicalism, but not primarily Islam. I mean, but radicalism is evil and should be confronted here and elsewhere.
Perhaps it's no surprise in this country that the people here are throwing themselves publicly, at least, behind the leadership. But there does seem to be a genuine feeling that they're prepared for the time being to put aside what President Trump has said in the past. They'll remember it, they won't forget it, but put it aside now for a greater gain, they hope, going down the road, George.
To hear the different takes that you got there during your time speaking with people, one of them confronting Iran, the other confronting radicalism, and one person right off the top of your piece hoping for an apology. Nick, we'll see how this speech goes. CNN's international diplomatic editor Nick Robertson live for us in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, and as we pointed out in the beginning of this, all of this going on, we get more revelations regarding the Russia probe and other things. Sources now tell CNN that Russian officials bragged about how close they were to Michael Flynn.
That's right. We're learning the Russians hope to use their relationship with Flynn to influence the new U.S. president, as Pamela Brown reports for us.
Multiple sources tell CNN that Russian officials bragged in conversations during the presidential campaign that they had cultivated such a strong relationship with former Trump advisor Michael Flynn that they believed they could use him to influence Donald Trump and his team. Now, those conversations deeply concern U.S. intelligence officials, and it even impacted what intelligence the incoming administration was privy to, because some Obama intelligence officials acted on their own to limit how much sensitive information they shared with Flynn. A former official tells our Gloria Borger that the way the Russians were talking about Flynn was regarded as a, quote, 5-alarm fire from early on. According to our sources, and the Russians' conversations indicated they regarded Flynn as their ally. Officials cautioned, though, that the Russians might have exaggerated their sway with Trump's team during those conversations. Now, Flynn's relationship with Russia developed throughout 2016, months before he was caught on an intercepted call in December, speaking with Russia's Sergei Kislyak. That ultimately led to Flynn's firing as Trump's first national security advisor. CNN has reached out to both Flynn's lawyer, who declined to comment, and the White House, who said, "We are confident that when these inquiries are complete, there will be no evidence to support any collusion between the campaign and Russia." Top former Obama intelligence officials and members of Congress briefed on the matter have all said the same thing. Pamela Brown, CNN, Washington.
Pamela Brown, thank you so much. A short time in, right, as the U.S. president, but this has probably been one of the most tumultuous ones, with the president now on a very ambitious foreign trip.
Yeah, ambitious indeed. As CNN's Sarah Murray reports, and we've heard this before, the president is hoping that this will be an opportunity for a reset and a break from all the controversies at home.
Donald Trump leaving Washington behind as he aims to use a high-stakes foreign trip to escape the cloud of controversy marring his presidency. But just as he took off, a fresh controversy broke out. The New York Times reporting that Trump told Russian officials in an Oval Office meeting that firing FBI Director James Comey relieved some of the pressure on him in the Russia investigation. Trump reportedly describing Comey, who was overseeing the Russia investigation at the time, as a real nut job, and saying, "I faced great pressure because of Russia. That's taken off." The White House did not deny the account. In a statement, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said, "By grandstanding and politicizing the investigation into Russia's actions, James Comey created unnecessary pressure on our ability to engage and negotiate with Russia. The investigation would have always continued, and obviously the termination of Comey would not have ended it." Trump's allies are hopeful the president will use his ambitious 5-nation foreign trip as an opportunity to move beyond complaints about the Russia investigation.
The entire thing has been a witch hunt, and there is no collusion between certainly myself and my campaign.
And refocus on his presidential agenda.
We want to get back and keep on the track that we're on, because the track that we're on is record-setting. And that's what we want to do, is we want to break very positive records.
It's a reset Trump's colleagues are openly wishing for as well.
He clearly did have bad 2 weeks, and clearly it's my hope that he does right the ship, that he improves, so that we can just get going.
But in Washington, the discussion is still dominated by the chaos of the past few weeks, largely caused by the president's own actions, as questions continue swirling about the president's snap decision to fire Comey and where the Russia investigation, now helmed by a special counsel, will lead. And the president will have a number of pressing issues to deal with as soon as he returns from his foreign trip. Among them, whether to hire an outside legal counsel now that a special counsel has taken over this Russia investigation, and of course, who he will pick to be his next FBI director after firing James Comey. Sarah Murray, CNN, the White House.
Sarah Murray, thank you so much. Now, to get a sense of how President Trump's growing problems are playing out in Russia, let's go live to Ivan Watson following the story in the Russian capital. Thank you, Ivan, for your time today. So many storylines playing out here in the States. One of them about, basically from the New York Times saying that he told senior officials in the Oval Office that Comey was a crazy and a nut job. That's one story. And the other, CNN learning from sources that officials were so confident of their close relationship with Michael Flynn, they bragged about it. What are you hearing there in Moscow? a response from this.
Well, this has not been front-page news here in Russia, and don't expect the same kind of leaking and anonymous information coming from the Kremlin bureaucracy and the Russian government bureaucracy that you're seeing in the U.S. Likewise, the Russian media, which is heavily influenced by the Kremlin, is not going to be reporting the kind of stuff that we're seeing from Washington day after day, talking about the investigation into alleged links between the Trump campaign and the Kremlin. The Kremlin's line throughout all of this, and this going back months, has been deny, 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 and then to say that this is an internal American affair, and then to either mock it or to denigrate it completely, with the Russian President Vladimir Putin recently saying that this is an example of political schizophrenia in the American political system, and to also claim that there's an anti-Russian campaign going on in the U.S. It's interesting that sometimes the Russian reaction, the official reaction to these claims of collusion and meddling and hacking, reflects some of the arguments that Donald Trump himself has used, which his defense has been to say that, hey, Russia's being used by the opposition in the U.S. as this weapon to flog me with, which Russian officials have suggested as well. There's no question that Moscow welcomed the election of Donald Trump, thought that he would be somebody who could help improve Russian-U.S. relations. And one of the lines that has come out of Russia consistently throughout the past months since the inauguration of Donald Trump has been to suggest that opponents within the U.S. political system are opposed to improving relations between Trump and Putin, and they're attacking the prospects of kind of an improvement in relations. So that's kind of the summary of what's been going on here in Moscow these past months, really.
Well, senior international correspondent Ivan Watson live for us in Russia. A lot to cover. Thank you so much for giving us the perspective there in Russia. So again, the U.S. president making his first international trip. All the while, the shadow of scandals continues to plague him back home, growing by the hour. This is Newsroom. We'll be back after the break.
South Africa, we're open for business with a diverse and stable economy, world-class infrastructure, and resourceful, innovative people. South Africa is an investor-friendly environment. It's also one of the most beautiful countries of the world to visit. South Africa, inspiring new ways.
His name alone sets hearts aflutter.
Hi, I'm Gong Yu.
At 37, he is South Korea's man of the moment. This month, we're with the actor in Seoul as he opens up about his reluctant stardom.
What don't you like about fame?
And reveals perhaps what fans want to know most.
Are you a good kisser?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Watch me on Talk Asia, only on CNN.
Talk Asia, Thursday on CNN. Sunday.
President Trump attacks the Russia investigation as the new special counsel takes the lead.
The entire thing has been a witch hunt.
Will former FBI Director Mueller find any evidence of collusion with Russia?
Sunday on CNN.
We cover major breaking news from around the world. Michael and I deliver it so our viewers feel like they're having a conversation with us.
Our hours are perfect for kicking off the day's news cycle.
Hello everyone, I'm Zain Asher, and these are the top business headlines. Turmoil in Washington caused a late pullback in U.S. stocks. The Dow still managed a gain of 142 points for the day, its best performance of the month. Despite all the turmoil, the Dow is down less than 0.5% for the week. The dollar, meanwhile, suffered its worst week in a year. It has now erased all the gains made since the U.S. election. Donald Trump has set off on his first overseas trip as U.S. president. He will champion U.S. business interests in Saudi Arabia, where he's expected to sign deals worth billions of dollars. Top executives from dozens of American companies are joining the president in Riyadh. London City Airport is replacing its control tower with a digital one 110 kilometers away. 14 cameras will feed a 360-degree view of the airfield to controllers. An array of sensors will provide data which can be overlaid on the screens. The new tower is expected to open in 2019. A painting by Jean-Michel Basquiat has sold at a Sotheby's auction for $111 million. It is the highest price ever paid for a work by an American artist. The last time it sold was 32 years ago for just $19,000. The buyer is a Japanese e-commerce tycoon who plans to loan the untitled piece out to museums all around the world. Those are the top business headlines. I'm Zain Asher in New York.
Sunday, President Trump's first foreign trip, 5 countries in 9 days, and a major address to the Islamic world. What will his message be to the religion he said hates America? Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sunday on CNN.
Hi, Robin.
Robin.
That's right, Robin.
Two sources tell CNN White House lawyers are doing research on impeachment procedures, and they're consulting experts on the subject. Now, the White House denies this and says it's still not true, and it's still very uncertain that President Trump would indeed face any such effort to remove him from office.
According to sources briefed on the legal discussions that are happening, the president still has the backing of Republicans in Congress. Democrats, for their part, have quieted talk of impeachment. So they believe that it may be premature. They don't want to overreach.
New York Times London bureau chief Stephen Erlanger joins us now from the British capital. I mean, I think the media is accused every day of perhaps this all leading to some kind of hysteria. Having said that, if we deal with transactional politics, we are dealing with scandal after scandal, a lot of distraction, not just for the president, but for his staff as well. I mean, at this point, do you believe the Trump administration is handicapped by having all these scandals in the hopes of having some kind of transformative policy initiative in the next 9 days?
Well, I do think Trump is badly hurt. Now, it doesn't have to last forever, but the White House is consumed with its own problems. It's like they have a bad intestinal problem, and it's very hard for them to kind of look outside to the rest of the world and see what needs to be done. So in this sense, I think this long trip that President Trump apparently was grumpy about doing it would be quite a good thing for him, because first of all, it sends him abroad where he's going to be honored and feted and treated like a king, which is happening in Saudi Arabia now, where everyone will want a bit of his time, where everyone will be listening incredibly closely to what he says about them rather than about himself and his problems, and where generally in a number of these countries they have real interest in a Trump administration that is different from the Obama administration. That's particularly true in Saudi Arabia and in Israel. So for all those reasons, I think, you know, Trump may enjoy this period abroad, but at the same time, leaders will look at him and wonder, can he last? And that's a serious question.
Yeah, and it does seriously undermine you when you're thinking about that. And I want to know from you, Stephen, if you've noticed the allies getting more nervous. I mean, they all seem to deal with the earthquake that was that political, you know, campaign, and that was the election, and they all seem to be willing to deal with the Trump administration on their own terms. You know, I've detected quite a change, though, in the last 2 weeks. What is it like, especially there in Europe, where Trump will be headed after he heads to Saudi Arabia and Israel?
Well, it's been a bit like a roller coaster. Everyone's waiting for the asteroid to hit, and they're not really sure what kind of impact it's going to make. You know, people were very nervous because Trump had said a lot of, you know, very hostile things during the campaign, especially. NATO was obsolete, and the European Union was going to break apart. But even as president, you know, he seemed to support Marine Le Pen in France. He's been a big backer of Brexit and Scottish independence. So people are nervous, and people see him as transactional. Now, the problem with a transactional America is it's all about interests, it's not about values. And if, for example, with NATO, where Trump's going to be later, there's Article 5, which is a commitment to collective defense. Now, that's not a transactional deal. That's a deal forever, if it's going to work, if it's going to act as a real deterrent. So the more transactional Trump seems, actually, the more nervous allies get. Now, some of his criticisms make perfect sense. NATO needs to do more for itself. It needs to spend more. It also needs to spend more efficiently. So, you know, this can have a good impact. Everyone in Brussels, certainly, I've talked to a lot of them, both at the European Union and NATO, are just hoping nothing goes wrong. They've set the bar very, very low. And if Trump sticks to the script, everyone else will be polite, and everyone will give a great sigh of relief after he goes.
You know, such vivid language from you this morning, Stephen. I have to say, and I'm sure you'll admit, that's nothing compared to what we've heard behind the scenes from allies. As you said, I think they're all just hoping, cross their fingers behind their backs and hope the trip goes well. I'm sure the Trump administration hopes that as well. We'll continue to catch up with you. I appreciate your time this morning from London.
Thanks, Paula.
And still ahead, this very important trip, more coverage on the U.S. president in Saudi Arabia. CNN is live on the story.
And Trump's campaign trail comments about Islam didn't win him any favors in the region. We'll take a look back as Trump gets ready to address the Muslim world.
As a chef in London, I've noticed that Japanese seafood like yellowtail and scallops are becoming very popular in both Europe and the United States. And I'm here in Japan to find out why. Japanese fish are carefully bred in clean ocean waters with a healthy, balanced feed. Fishermen, wholesalers, and exporters in Japan work closely to control the freshness of the fish throughout the supply chain.
最新の輸送システム、高度な加工技術により世界中へ新鮮な魚を届けることができております。
When seafood is this fresh, it's simply incredible. This is yellowtail shabu.
You can really taste how fresh it is.
It tastes just very pure and natural. Wow. If you like that, I think you'll enjoy the scallops as well. They're straight from the ocean. It has a really beautiful sweetness to them. The sashimi is just delicious. The flavor is unbelievable.
Good?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Go inside the world of horse racing on CNN's Winning Post.
This month we're at America's greatest race, the Kentucky Derby, here at Churchill Downs.
Sunday on CNN in association with Longines.
For somebody to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously, and it's not something you can just parachute in and ask somebody to open their heart to you. To peel away the layers to get to the heart of the person who you're telling a story about.
France will never give up against the terrorists.
And delve beneath the surface of what's happening. You can hear their story, and you're going to do their story justice. You have to show yourself to them.
How high was the water? The water was as tall as that tree.
CNN's the right place to tell their story.
Because leaving home doesn't mean living less. Stay at a hotel that has the news source you trust. Stay at a CNN partner hotel.
She had a natural curiosity that motivated her move from the familiar and called her to see the world. Along the way, she began to tell stories, whether those stories were far from her roots or close at heart, whether they made her smile or tested her strength. Storytelling is what took her there and got her here. Newsstream with Christy Lou Stout, weeknights on CNN.
I'm Matthew Chance in Moscow, and this is CNN.
Live from CNN World Headquarters in Atlanta. We welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. This is CNN Newsroom. Good to have you with us. I'm George Howell.
And I'm Paula Newton. The headlines this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump has arrived to a royal welcome in the Saudi capital of Riyadh. King Salman greeted Mr. Trump on the first stop of his first overseas trip since taking office. Now, the president is set to meet with other Arab and Muslim leaders as well.
Before the 2016 U.S. election, Moscow embraced this man, the retired U.S. General Michael Flynn, as an ally who could influence Donald Trump. Sources tell CNN Russian officials even bragged among themselves about their strong ties with Flynn. Flynn was fired after less than a month as national security advisor.
Now, after firing the FBI director, President Trump reportedly insulted him as a, quote, nut job. According to the New York Times, he said it the next day to senior Russian officials in the Oval Office. The president also reportedly said the FBI's investigation into Russian meddling had put, in his words, great pressure on the White House.
The story we're following in Iran, state media says the current president, Hassan Rouhani, is in the lead as the vote continues to be counted in that country's presidential election. Mr. Rouhani is seeking a second term in office. His main rival, the conservative cleric Ibrahim Raisi. If no candidate gets more than 50% of the vote, a runoff will be held.
Now, for more on the U.S. president's trip to Saudi Arabia, we're joined by our White House reporter, Jeremy Diamond. He is in Riyadh. I mean, so far, so good. He did just land. And again, we are seeing, you know, a lot of the reverence that the kingdom is showing right now to Donald Trump. Having said that, I mean, even you, Jeremy, you must have been confronted with so much news getting off that airplane. Do you believe that it will distract from what is a very, very ambitious 9-day foreign trip?
Well, certainly the swirl of controversies that this White House and this president are facing are continuing to dog him even as he lands here in Saudi Arabia. As they traveled the several thousand miles from Washington to Riyadh overnight, several significant news stories breaking, including additional information and more allegations concerning the Russian investigation, the investigation into potential contacts between Trump campaign officials and Russian officials. We're learning that Michael Flynn, who became the national security advisor for just 24 days. Russian officials believe that they could influence President Trump through Michael Flynn, and that raised suspicions from Obama administration officials during the transition. The White House making clear that they hope this investigation that now has a special counsel overseeing it in an independent manner. White House officials telling CNN that they hope this investigation will be resumed swiftly, and they expect that nothing will be found of those contacts between Russian officials and Trump campaign associates. But clearly the president and his team, as they land here in Saudi Arabia, hoping to change the focus away from those controversies and towards this week of powerhouse diplomacy that the president has. You know, as you mentioned, the greeting that the president got this morning here in Saudi Arabia was one full of pageantry with the Saudi king, despite his old age and the heat that we have here, coming to the tarmac to greet President Trump and his wife, Melania Trump, as they stepped foot in Saudi Arabia. What to expect here from this visit is, you know, the president is potentially looking for a sort of reset in relations with the Muslim world. Of course, you'll remember his very strong rhetoric during the campaign, controversial rhetoric that billions of Muslims around the world found very offensive. The president, of course, called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States, said that, quote, Islam hates us. That, of course, very much in contrast with the reception that he is getting here from Saudi officials, who are, of course, looking to forge a stronger partnership with the Trump administration to confront regional conflicts like with Iran, and, of course, to confront terrorism together.
Yeah, and what strikes me is this just isn't a rhetorical reset. I mean, the Trump administration has some very different ideas than the Obama administration about how things should go there. Do we get any indication, Jeremy, that because of that, that he will be raising human rights or not raising human rights at all in Saudi Arabia?
Well, what one senior White House official told us just a couple days ago was we're not going to lecture anyone. And that's been so far the pattern that we've seen from Trump as he's met with a number of these leaders from autocratic leaders from several of these Muslim countries. President Trump has made clear that, you know, he's not trying to lecture people, certainly not in public. White House officials telling us that he will instead raise human rights concerns in private. We saw some of that happen as he greeted Egyptian strongman President El-Sisi at the White House earlier in his term. Of course, they didn't raise human rights concerns publicly, but we later saw one of these American activists in Egypt who was imprisoned. She was released shortly following that meeting with El-Sisi.
Yeah, again, you're just bringing up the very tip of the iceberg of all there is to talk about on this visit. Jeremy, you continue to follow it for us there live in Riyadh. Appreciate it.
Well, no doubt, Paula, this is a very important speech ahead for the U.S. president, seen as a reset in the Muslim world. President Trump gearing up to address Muslims all over the world. But when he was running for office, it was a different story. Mr. Trump very vocal about what he thought of Muslims.
Yeah, now he once said in an interview, as Jeremy just reminded us, that, quote, Islam hates us. What's so startling, George, going back over the speech from President Barack Obama in Cairo after his presidency, completely different in terms of the frame of reference that Donald Trump had. It's interesting how much he's going to bring that back. Our Brianna Keeler takes a look back at some of Trump's controversial comments.
As a candidate, Donald Trump drew wide criticism when he falsely claimed Muslims had cheered the collapse of the World Trade Center on 9/11.
And I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering as that building was coming down. Thousands of people were cheering.
Just weeks later, in December 2015, Trump first announced his proposal to ban Muslims. It came in the wake of the ISIS-inspired attack in San Bernardino, California, by a U.S.-born Pakistani American and his wife.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
As Trump surged in the primaries, he said the religion as a whole was anti-American.
Do you think Islam is at war with the West?
I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there.
A message heard loud and clear in Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of Islam. Trump is now there to give a speech intended, his top aides say, to unite the Muslim world against terrorism.
And it is there that we will begin to construct a new foundation of cooperation and support with our Muslim allies to combat extremism, terrorism, and violence, and to embrace a more just and hopeful future for young Muslims in their countries. A terrible thing.
He'll have a lot of explaining to do, particularly on his travel ban of several Muslim-majority countries, now tied up in the court system.
Well, first of all, it's not a travel ban. He's been very clear that it is extreme vetting.
And also clear that it was indeed a ban.
We're going to have a very, very strict ban, and we're going to have extreme vetting, which we should have had in this country for many years.
That ban authored with significant input from top White House aide Stephen Miller, who is also the main author of the remarks that Trump will deliver on Islam. As a college student, Miller worked with the Terrorism Awareness Project, a group considered an anti-Muslim hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Brianna Keeler, CNN, Washington.
Still ahead here, a royal reception in Saudi Arabia, one that won't go unnoticed on the other side of the Persian Gulf. Reaction from Iran to Donald Trump's first foreign trip.
Plus, the U.S. president set to travel to Israel after Saudi Arabia. What his talks with Saudi and Arab leaders might mean for the next part of that trip as CNN Newsroom continues.
An island paradise, known for its bounty of beautiful beaches. But there's much more to the Philippines. Come with us to explore ancient customs and new flavors. Gaze at the curious and the spectacular. We're island hopping to seek out the country's hidden treasures. Destination Philippines, tonight on CNN. All new Inside Africa. Unlocking the mysteries behind the continent you thought you knew. Journey through Zambia's most majestic river for a centuries-old celebration.
It is a national pride. It unifies people.
Inside Africa, tonight, only on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank. Our planet's future hangs in the balance. We need to find solutions for Earth's big issues. Solutions to fight deforestation, to produce renewable energy, to clean our oceans and air, and solutions to revitalize our cities.
On Eco Solutions, we talk to people who are taking steps to help balance our environmental challenges and who show us how to make better choices every day.
Eco Solutions, tonight on CNN.
ISIS is shooting from areas that have civilians in them.
A lot of coalition planning, American air power.
This is basically what is left of rebel-held Aleppo.
Tens of thousands of people who have already been displaced.
The battle still rages all around us.
It's less than a mile to safety. We're lucky. We can leave the combat zone. I'm Aisha Sase in Los Angeles.
I'm John Bors in San Bernardino, California. You're watching CNN's breaking coverage of that mass shooting.
A couple hundred people here now marching onto City Hall here in San Francisco.
You didn't name Bill Cosby there. Many people again will ask the question, why now?
Donald Trump came all the way down here, and the issue of who would pay for the wall just never came up.
A deal can be done and can result in the release of some girls.
I learned a long time ago when I was first confronted with outrageous behavior in places like the Balkans, when one side was slaughtering another because of its ethnic and religious definition. I learned that as a journalist, I could not be morally equivalent, and nor could I present false factual equivalence. I insist on being truthful, not neutral.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We are following breaking news out of Iran this hour, the election that's taken place there. Iranian state media has a new ticker, scroll reading. The national media, IRINN, congratulates the victory of Mr. Hassan Rouhani in the presidential election. Again, this is the headline coming out of Iran this hour. You see the President Hassan Rouhani in the presidential election. This video is what we're looking at right now. Iran's Interior Ministry has not released new numbers since their last update. Those numbers had the incumbent President Rouhani with 22 million votes, a little more than 22 million, 700,000. His main challenger, Ibrahim Raisi, with 15 million of the votes. Those numbers reported, and giving you the broad numbers can be more specific here. Exactly 22,796,468, and Mr. Raisi with 15,452,194 votes. Let's go live to Fred Pleiken, who is on the ground following this. Fred, what's the latest?
Hi, George. Well, what we're expecting is that in the next around 45 minutes, the Interior Ministry is probably going to announce the official results of this election. The numbers that you were just giving was with about 38 million of the votes counted in this election. And again, the Iranians were saying that more than 40 million people actually voted in this election. So there were still some ballots that were being counted, and that's why there isn't any sort of official announcement from the Interior Ministry yet. But apparently the state media is seeing that Hassan Rouhani is so far ahead in the votes that have been counted so far that they are already congratulating him on winning this election. There's also some smaller news agencies here in Iran that have actually done the same thing, that are also saying Hassan Rouhani has won this election, which of course, George, as we've been saying over the past couple of days, is a very important one to many Iranians, very important in shaping this country's role in the Middle East, in shaping this country's role globally as well, and of course internally as far as its economic policies are concerned. And from having been at a lot of these polling stations, one major polling station in Tehran yesterday, you could really see that the turnout was very, very high. Many people were coming out and telling us, look, right now we have two candidates, especially whose economic policies are diametrically opposed to one another, and that's why many of them said they believed that this election was so very important. And finally, George, one of the things that we also shouldn't underestimate was in the run-up to the election, the Donald Trump factor. Of course, right now, with him, the president being in Saudi Arabia and Israel, also with some of the policies and some of the rhetoric coming out of the Trump administration, Hassan Rouhani was put under a lot of pressure by the conservatives because, of course, he was the one who negotiated the nuclear agreement. He was the one who said that this country should engage more with the West, also with the United States, and that's something that he was very much criticized for after the Trump administration took that hard line. But it doesn't seem to have hurt him in the polls. Judging from what we're just hearing, it seems as though Hassan Rouhani will be declared the victor of Iran's 12th presidential election in its history here.
Fred Fleiken live in Tehran, Iran. Thank you so much. Again, the headline here, national media congratulating the victory of Hassan Rouhani in the presidential election. CNN, of course, has a correspondent on the ground. We'll continue to bring you updates and news lines as we learn more about this breaking news we're following.
Yeah, a lot going on in the Middle East right now. Donald Trump, of course, now on the ground in Saudi Arabia. What we want to let you know is that, of course, Israel will be his next stop. We want to know about how they are viewing this visit there. Oren Lieberman joins us now live from Jerusalem. Oren, thanks so much. It's nice to see you. And I really want to get your take on this. It's been great sport reading the headlines in Israel the last few days. But it is interesting because Donald Trump was fond of saying on the campaign trail that Israel will never have a better friend. How is Israel thinking he's going to live up to that now?
Well, that's where the focus wants to be, and as close and as short as possible to that. This should be an easy visit. It's a Republican president. It's a conservative government here, Republican Congress, Republican Senate, and yet the Israelis are very much on edge. There is a sense of nervousness here about this visit, and that's because of what he's liable to say sort of off script, any spontaneous comments he might make, because the issue here, right, and the issue that Trump wants to address, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is very sensitive. And if he says too much about it or demands too much from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, it could really affect Netanyahu, because many of Netanyahu's coalition partners, or at least some of the key ones, are anti-Palestinian state and don't want to see Netanyahu making concessions. So the more it focuses on the conflict, on Israelis and Palestinians, the worse it is from the perspective of Netanyahu's government. The more this focuses on Iran and the threat Iran poses to the region, the better for Netanyahu's government. I've spoken with numerous politicians, both in the opposition and the coalition, and they all basically have the same sentiment, which is to say, this is about the optics. This has to look good, but the sooner Trump gets in, shakes the right hands, makes the right statements, and the sooner this is over, the better off it is from the Israeli perspective. And that's interesting because that's a role reversal here. The Palestinians are fairly calm going in. They believe President Mahmoud Abbas has made the right statements and played his cards right with his meeting in Washington, with his meeting with the other Arab leaders in Saudi Arabia right before Trump comes here. And they want to see what he has to address the peace process. So it's an interesting role reversal here. It's the Israelis that are nervous. It's the Palestinians that are calm. And we'll see how this all plays out. Again, Paul, it's about the optics. So if the right statements are made and the right photos are taken, this should be an easy visit, and that's where it could end up. But if this goes off script with spontaneous comments, it could have some serious consequences playing out here, especially for the Israelis.
I really hope you haven't jinxed anything. Okay, the good thing is you get to put up with whatever happens. We're going to lean heavily on Oren through the next few days to bring us through this. And again, a lot riding on the line with what is a pivotal relationship in the Middle East. Appreciate it, Oren.
Still ahead here on CNN Newsroom, Pippa Middleton was nearly the center of attention at her sister's wedding, and now she's getting ready for her own. Details ahead.
South Africa is a country like no other. A land whose people are united in cultural diversity and a unique landscape. A country rich in natural beauty, brimming with mineral resources, endless investment opportunities, and boasting a thriving economy. Welcome to a country that's open for business. Welcome to South Africa.
From inside the pit lane and the paddock on Formula One's race weekends, CNN's the circuit will bring you all the latest. The drivers, the teams, and the cars.
The Circuit, tonight on CNN, in association with DHL.
Sunday, President Trump's first foreign trip, 5 countries in 9 days, and a major address to the Islamic world. What will his message be to the religion he said hates America? Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sunday on CNN.
Hi there, I'm Patrick Snell with your CNN World Sport headlines. So, Rafa Nadal is human after all. Nadal has been steamrolling all before him, winning 3 tournaments on the bounce. But on Friday, against the young Austrian player Dominic Thiem, he more than met his match. Thiem, with the shock of the clay court season so far, winning this Italian Open quarterfinal in straights on Friday. Rafa badly out of sorts here. In fact, he lost more sets on Friday than in those 3 last events he'd won combined. Staying with tennis, Maria Sharapova, who's controversially returned to the sport after her 15-month ban for doping, has revealed she'll be trying to enter this year's Wimbledon through a qualifying tournament rather than requesting a wild card for the main draw. The Russian issuing a statement saying she won't be giving the organisers a dilemma and will be going through the normal process that her ranking dictates. And the frustrations continuing for Rory McIlroy this weekend as the world's #2 ranked golfer continues to look for not just form right now, but fitness. On Friday, Northern Ireland's 4-time major winner revealing he's to miss next week's flagship European Tour event. That's the BMW PGA Championship, due to that ongoing rib injury of his, which initially caused him to withdraw from the Abu Dhabi event earlier this year. The season's second major, that's the US Open, takes place next month in Wisconsin. Let's look at your World Sport headlines. I'm Patrick Snell.
City, the world's financial capital, where history is made and tomorrow is planned.
And this is the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. From here, we'll bring you the events moving the business world.
Creating jobs, building economies, and shifting wealth around the globe. Live from the New York Stock Exchange, CNN Money with Maggie Lake and the new Quest Express. Weeknights on CNN.
Welcome back to Newsroom. So we are just hours away from the biggest wedding of the year in the United Kingdom. Pippa Middleton, the sister-in-law of a future king, is about to walk down the aisle.
We could all use a little break. A nice wedding, some nice dresses. Members of the royal family, including her sister, the Duchess of Cambridge, will attend, of course. Our Aaron McLaughlin is near the village of Bucklebury, where the ceremony will be held. I mean, it seems to me, I know this isn't a royal wedding, and yet there really seems to be a lot of anticipation. Or is my imagination? I just want to see the kids so badly, Aaron. What is it?
So much anticipation and media speculation surrounding this wedding, Paula. Let me just give you a sense of where I'm standing. I'm in Bucklebury, sort of wedged between where the ceremony is going to be taking place at a 12th century church on a private estate and where the reception is going to be taking place, which is, of course, at the Middleton family home, not far from here. Now, there's limited media access, as you might imagine, to the event itself, but they are allowing 2 royal pool cameras to cover the church arrivals and departures, which is very unusual for the royal family to be covering a Middleton event in this way. But of course, this is a special occasion. Prince George and Princess Charlotte are expected to attend. They have roles in the wedding in what promises to be a lavish affair.
It's not quite a royal wedding, but on the scale of hotly anticipated nuptials, it's pretty close. With the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge attending, 3-year-old Prince George and 2-year-old Princess Charlotte taking starring roles as page boy and flower girl. And Prince Harry on the guest list. Pippa Middleton's wedding to financier James Matthews is set to be Britain's wedding of the year. Though the details are being kept under tight wraps, the bride and groom-to-be have been spotted in the English countryside, attending to the final preparations of the 12th century church where the wedding ceremony will take place. Just a few miles from her parents' estate for the marquee reception. Pippa Middleton first grabbed the world's attention at the wedding of her sister Kate to Prince William in 2011. As maid of honor, her dress, and more precisely, her figure, made headlines. Suddenly, the overshadowed younger sister shot to fame.
It's been a crazy couple of years since my sister's wedding, but it's had its upsides and downsides, and I just feel really fortunate to be able to build a career as a writer.
With the celebrity status came opportunity. Pippa authored a book. She even became a contributor for Vanity Fair. After dating a string of high society men, 41-year-old Matthews popped the question last summer after almost 2 years of dating. Despite all the interest in the couple themselves, the biggest question is whether Prince Harry's girlfriend, Meghan Markle, will be his date. Speculation abounds, but it's unknown if the American actress will accompany Prince Harry to either the church or the reception. If Markle attends, it will be the couple's highest profile outing to date and may spark rumors of another royal wedding in the wings.
And we're about an hour and a half away from the wedding ceremony itself. Lots to look forward to. Paula?
Aaron, appreciate it. Aaron looking pretty in pink for the wedding. That's all for this hour of CNN Newsroom. I'm Paula Newton.
And I'm George Howell. The news continues here on CNN after the break.
The Dangote Group stands at the forefront of African enterprise. Since 1978, we've touched the lives of millions of people by meeting their basic needs. Our belief in the promise of Africa has taken us into 14 African countries. With substantial investments that will propel the continent towards greater prosperity, promising jobs, improved standards of living, and economic growth. Dangote, for an empowered Africa.
All new African Voices. This week, these music superstars are creating chart toppers across Africa.
What I love most about rap is just how diverse and dynamic it is.
African Voices, tonight on CNN.
Join me, Kate Baldwin, for the latest in U.S. politics. We have smart discussions and a whole lot of fun.
State of America, Tuesday through Friday on CNN. And get more State of America on the new podcast. Subscribe now with your favorite app.